My goal is to meet and help as many apartment owners as possible by sharing real-time information gathered by my transactional volume, outreach to owners, and data. Hi everyone, today is May 18th, it's Monday morning. I am about to put on this screen after this introduction a voice recording interview with Kevin Mansour. Him and his brother Alvin Mansour are based out of our Marcus and Millichap downtown San Diego office, and they are responsible for just about $1 billion or more per year in sales volume. Their team is like number 1 or number 2 with the firm for the last 15 years, and they specialize and focus just on net lease properties. You know, a lot of apartment investors and owners usually transition into net lease properties as they want to increase their cash flow, get out of property management, maybe get out of some of the increased and insane legislation that's happening with regards to tenants and landlords. And there are other benefits of consummating an exchange like this. There's also a lot of question marks, uncertainty, and fear when owning an asset for so long, and a broker comes to them and says, hey, look, you can do this, and it sounds all good and gravy, but there's just so much unknown. So I did a 25-minute interview with him. I've dissected it. I took about 6 or 7 minutes that I thought were very interesting, put it in this video. If you guys have any questions about net lease properties, want to talk to someone on their team directly, I'm happy to make that introduction and also answer any questions for you. Thank you so much. Bye. Is there anything else that you're seeing out there that might be interesting to multifamily owners right now that might consider getting into a net lease deal?
I think it's important to know, depending on how much equity, if they're exiting an apartment building and navigating this uncertainty, something that, especially with potential legislation that it could impact the value of an apartment building, I don't see that going anywhere over the next, I look at it, 10, 20 years. I think you're going to continue to see legislation that is going to be passed that's going to be pro-tenant, anti-landlord on the multifamily side. Now, moving into net lease, it's a very unique scenario to know how much income you're going to get for the next 10 to 20 years, especially for estate planning or moving properties down to the next generation. It's imperative to know, where you're going to be and how you can plan for the future. Whereas it's not so easy to plan for the future with an apartment building. You don't know what kind of, capital expenses you'll have in the future, the useful life of the building, rent laws that could impact the value of the property, restrictions and different kind of things that will come up that will impact the exit value. Now, something to note, with where interest rates are today, many owners have the ability to buy multiple properties and diversify into different segments of net lease. So they're not overexposed to one concept. And it is smart to take advantage of where rates are today because they're at historical low levels, and we do expect that to continue until we rebound. And it's probably going to take several years. But taking advantage of the rates, fixing that in for the next 10 years or so, it becomes pretty favorable. And kind of spreading out the equity and buying, 1, 2, 3 properties, depending on how large the exchange is.
Yeah. I would say the biggest objection I get with apartment owners who are on the fence is like they own a 10-unit apartment building, and they have, and it's so different because in their minds they have vacancies all the time, right? You own an apartment building, on average tenancy, let's say, is 2 years here in LA. So every 2 years they have a vacant unit. And so they're like, well, that's their mindset with their investments for the last 20 years. And so they're scared to get into a single tenant deal because, it's one tenant. And so if you were having that conversation with someone, what's the reality of net lease deals when it comes to vacancy?
I think and just to clarify, my family used to own apartments, and we kind of exited for that reason as well, and because of the management headache and because of the turnover, and moved to net lease, and we'll continue to do that moving forward. if you're buying good real estate with a concept that does very well, with a rent that's very replaceable, the chances of losing that tenant or them relocating is much lower, because with rising construction costs, it's not going to be easy for these tenants to relocate or go to the next, go across the street or move, or shut the store down if they're not performing. If you're buying the right deal and getting the proper advice on which net lease to buy and buying good real estate, then the chances are going to be very slim to none that you lose that tenant. Now, in the event you lose that tenant and they're paying a very low rent and you're in a good location, it's not always a bad thing to lose that tenant. In many cases, you can increase the rent multiple times, in the next 10, if it's 10, 20 years from now, if you're buying good dirt. This is why the focus for me is buy quality, and things will work out. If the concept fails in the next 10 to 20 years, there's a high likelihood someone else will want to be there if you're buying good dirt.
Very true.
Yeah. And then one thing to touch on as well, if you're buying a lease with 10 or 20 years with a major corporation, public company, and they do vacate for whatever reason, they still are required to pay you rent for that initial lease term. So it could be 20 years of rent, it could be 10 years. Although I don't see that as often on newer deals, which is what we specialize in, it could always happen, but you are guaranteed that rent, which I think is important.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a misconception, and that's definitely that there's an lease agreement between a corporate tenant and the landlord, and I've seen that some of those deals listed. They're called dark deals, right, Kevin? Where the tenant's still paying the rent, but they're not actually occupying the space.
Correct, and they're required to meet all the requirements that are in the lease, and they're required to maintain the property as well in a certain condition.